Welcome back to the Organic Chemistry Reaction App Devlog. This devlog journals my efforts to make the Organic Chemistry Reaction App, OCRA. The app is currently available on itch.io and on Google Play if you'd like to check them out. And in this devlog, I want to do a quick debrief of my poster presentation at the Canadian Chemistry Conference. First of all, the poster was really well received. A lot of people stopped by, and I think it got a lot of attention. If I'm being honest, I don't really think it was the poster at all. I had a tablet set up with the game running, and I just kept inviting people to play. Someone swings by, and I say, hey, want to play my game? It's right here. Hey, want to play my game? So I barely talked about the poster at all even, but I think that's actually what a good presentation is. At least when it's a PowerPoint presentation, they say that the audience should be focused on the speaker and not on the slides. The slides are just there to supplement what the speaker is saying, but the audience should be focused on the presenter. And this is maybe kind of the same thing. The focus should be on me and on the project, not so much on the poster. The poster is just there for eye candy. And I think the focus was on that, because I didn't really have to walk through the poster, section by section. So it felt very organic, and it seemed like there was a lot of engagement. So that's good. The second thing I want to mention is that I feel like I'm on the right track in terms of my vision for the game. Based on the feedback that I was getting, it seems that my game is well aligned with the needs of the chemistry community. One worry I had with presenting the app was that there are just so many potential benefits to this game. And I could have talked about any of them, and I just wasn't sure which one I had to focus on, which one was the right one to focus on. And you kind of want to bring them all up, but you don't have enough time to do that. But in my talks with the other conference attendees, many of them observed most of those benefits themselves. I didn't even need to bring them up. They just mentioned them in their discussions with me. They brought it up themselves. So it seems like chemists already understand the benefits of this type of app, which is good because it's hard for me to describe, and I just have this sense that this is the right thing to do. And knowing that other chemists also have that sense is quite validating. So it's good that they recognize the value without having me, or without needing me to tell them what the value is. A lot of people also asked about things, how to improve the app. So things like improved feedback for questions that a player gets wrong. So if you get the puzzle wrong, it might actually tell you how to get the right answer or what mistake you made. Or maybe they want more puzzles, of course, puzzles of different reaction types. One person was asking for carbohydrate chemistry reactions, and I was like, I'll get there eventually. Or maybe they want to be able to select what type of puzzles they do, so they only know, alkene substitution reactions. So they just want to practice those for now. So, and actually all of these features are something that I mentioned in my future potential section on the poster. And so the fact that I sort of already predicted those needs and have them in my future work section, it seems like I've done a good job of foreseeing what's going to be wanted in the future for an app like this. And I'm already planning on these features. So yeah, it seems like I'm in a pretty good spot. The features are not close to being implemented at all, but they're on my mind. So it's good to hear that feedback and know that I'm aligned with what they're asking for. I don't necessarily need to change a lot, re-envision something, or just scrap this project altogether. It's on the right track, and it's validating to hear that as well. One observation I made when people were playing the game is that the game needs to do a better job prompting them to continue a puzzle. A lot of times people would draw one correct arrow and then they would think they were done. It felt to me like they were waiting for the game to respond to their correct input. And right now the game doesn't respond to every input. It only responds to either incorrect inputs or when all of the arrows are drawn. So if there's a step in a mechanism that requires 2 arrows to be drawn, drawing that first arrow gives no feedback to the player. And I think the player is waiting for that feedback. And I can improve this. So I thought about this just a little bit. I already have a red X appear when an arrow is wrong. So that means I should be able to easily make something else that appears when the arrow is right. And I'm thinking instead of a green check mark like I have for when a step is done, I'm thinking a message that says something like keep going, so that they know to keep going. And tacking onto that, the red X could probably be replaced by a message as well, something like try again, because that prompts them to try again, as opposed to a red X, which is quite neutral. So keep going is encouragement to keep going. Try again is encouragement to try again. So I probably will change the red X to some text. And then finally, when a step is done, instead of just a green check mark, I can put another keep going message. Or when the puzzle is actually finished, then I can say finished. Because sometimes people would draw enough arrows, but then they would go to the next step of the reaction. The reaction's not done yet, but they might think that they're done. And I've always sort of known that there's not really a good indicator as to when the puzzle is complete. So I was trying to do something earlier on with a border that would be like black at first, and then if you got the puzzle wrong, it would turn red. Or if you got the puzzle right, it would turn green. But it just never really looked good to me, so I nixed that idea. But I think this idea of putting in text that just says, keep going or try again or, finished, I think that will help. So I can implement that pretty easily. And maybe that will be in the next release. We'll see. Another observation I found was that people were struggling a lot with the controls. I've always known that this was a bit of a problem, and I still don't have a solution for it. This one solution would be to make everything bigger, but when you make it bigger, suddenly the molecules don't fit on the screen. And this was even done on a tablet. So I'm kind of designing this game for a phone, which is smaller than a tablet. And on the tablet, the molecules are actually quite big, so you should be able to easily select what you're trying to select, right? But there is still some struggles with that. I don't really struggle with it because I've just played the game so much and I have experience programming it and I know how it should work and all of that stuff. So it's hard for me to troubleshoot this because I have, a lot of bias, I guess, or just a lot of blind spots in terms of my assessment of it. But I still, I observe people struggling with it. Part of it could just be that they've never played the game before, and maybe after playing it for a little while, they might get used to it and it won't be a big deal. But I think obviously it would be better if it was a perfect understanding and the controls worked great right from the start. I just don't know how to get there, though, unfortunately. One thing I can do is to not check answers that are drawn too quickly. So there were a few times where somebody would select a bond and then immediately release their touch. And so the game would start drawing an arrow because they selected the bond. And then the arrow would get placed over top of a nearby atom. And then when they release it, the game would think that they're drawing that arrow and that's actually the wrong answer. And so the game is telling them that it's wrong, which is intended because it was the wrong answer. But that's not what the player was trying to draw. So I think I might be able to mitigate this not completely, but a little bit by having the game sort of ignore arrows that aren't drawn or that are drawn too quickly. So if the arrow is drawn in less than half a second, then ignore the answer. Unless the answer was right, I guess. If somebody draws the right arrow and then it happened, but they drew it too quickly and the game decided that it disappears because it was too quick, that wouldn't be great. That would confuse people. So if the answer is right, it stays. But if the answer is wrong and it was drawn too quickly, then the game can assume that it was just an erroneous input as opposed to an erroneous answer. So they can ignore that. I think I can program that in. And that should be a small fix, but it still doesn't fix all of the control issues. Hopefully it's just an experience thing and people can get over it and get used to the controls. Hopefully it doesn't frustrate people and prevent them from playing the game. Last point. This game is needed. Chemists need to be able to practice mechanisms in a fun and easy way. So many people who stop by struggled to solve even the simple problems. And these aren't randos either. Most people attending the conference were chemistry graduate students or chemistry professors. So these are people who should know chemistry very well. And they were making very elementary mistakes. Like for simple acid-base reactions, a lot of people were trying to draw arrows from the proton on the acid to the base because the proton moves from the acid to the base. But that's not how mechanisms work, right? That's sort of logically, that seems like what's happening. But mechanistically, the electrons do the moving, right? The base has the electrons. The arrow doesn't go from the proton to the electrons. The arrow goes from the electrons to the proton. So they were always trying to do it backwards. And I observed this, more than once. And this is elementary knowledge. And these types of mistakes would be inexcusable even for an intro organic student. And this is professors who are making these mistakes. I'm not trying to throw shade here, no judgment coming from me. They're just out of practice, haven't done it in a while. And that's exactly why chemistry as a community needs this game. Chemists need to stay in practice. They just don't have the tools that they need in order to do the practice, and so they fall out of practice. There's nothing that's accessible enough for them to use. And so they stop practicing the chemistry because there's no way for them to practice chemistry. It's hard for me to overstate this. Practicing chemistry sucks. Any practice material that's readily available is mind-numbingly boring. I observed this firsthand in my survey of, chemistry apps, where it's all just multiple choice studying for a test. Nobody wants to do that. It's boring. The only people that do that are the people who are literally studying for a final exam. Professors don't study for exams. They write the exams. So they're not going to practice multiple choice questions in their spare time. They're not going to, write down ice tables. Ridiculous, right? If you want fun practice that's interesting, you're not going to find it in an accessible way. You have to dig really hard to find interesting problems that you actually want to engage with. And usually you have to literally make those questions yourself. And so it's a very ad hoc approach that just is too much effort to even bother doing. So we need this game. We need OCRA. It's something fun, something accessible, something that's easy to do for a quick 5 minutes while you're waiting for the bus. We need this tool that chemists can use to stay in practice and not forget the basics that they learned in university. We need OCRA. I kind of got fired up there, I guess, a little bit. But I'm just really passionate about my app. Anyway, it was a great conference, and I enjoyed sharing my work with the chemistry community. The only thing that's missing is an opportunity to collaborate with a professor or a department or a university or, some way to get my app into the classroom in a bit more of a formal way, just to get some data about how the app might help students, and, maybe publish a paper or something. If anybody's interested in that and is in a position to be able to do that, i.e. they're a university professor, basically, then reach out. Let's get in touch. It'd be fun to talk more and possibly work together. And that's all I have to say about that. Thanks for watching.